wondering, is this thing actually happening or not? And it's time for us to break through some of these walls and to say, hey, guess what? Africa is here. We are ready. And the market is growing. We are one of the few growing markets, if any, left outside of Africa in the world. This is a growth market. Think about it. The population is still growing. Not only that, but as industries grow, as businesses grow, that means also the buying capacity of individuals grows. I know we're in the midst of hyperinflation. Well, it's not really hyperinflation. High inflation rates, higher than what we've been seeing in the past. And so it can feel like it's being eroded, but there's still so much growth happening on this continent. So it's time for us as entrepreneurs to take advantage of that and get into the business space. So we are really, really grateful for your time. We don't take it for granted. And as you can see, to the best of our ability, we do try and keep time when it comes to our classes, which start next week on the 8th. And so if you have not registered for the class, this is the time to do so. The idea of this session for the free trial class is to give you an experience of what it's like to interact and to engage with us through a class session. And that's what we're going to go through now. But the real transformation happens over the next couple of weeks, starting next week on the 8th, which is when the class begins. And we want you in this class. You don't want to miss out on it. We want you to make that commitment, because as you begin to go through the process, you'll see the shift that is happening. As always, ladies and gentlemen, we have so many in the room. It's difficult for me to gauge until you tell me who is here. So if you don't mind, in the chat box, please just let me know where you are in the world and what business you are in. So just name the city to test my knowledge of geography. Name the city and what business you're in the chat box, as many as possible. We're over 100 of us in this session, which is just amazing. This is what it's about. This is where the shift is going to happen. So if you don't mind, kindly do that as well. I think there's a couple of people who are following us on social media as well. You can use the chat box for that as well, and the comment section for that as well. So great to have you here. Thank you, Jacinta. Bridal, let me tell you, weddings, big industry, yeah, huge industry, billions of dollars around the world on these different areas that are there. And hey, by the way, I do recognize that in the room, we do have some people who are yet to start a business. Maybe you're thinking about something, maybe you're planning something that you are, not so 100% sure of, or you're thinking about it. It's okay. Just tell me where you are and then say, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about this. I'm here to simply discover. That's also all right. Wow. Excellent. Food industry there. Thank you, Brian. Hey, nail products. Beauty. Huge industry. There you are, Kendi, as well. We've got quite a few people in that same place. Tours. Yeah, if you're in Africa and you're not in the tourism business, we don't know what you need to have some feelers into that same space. Stationery, baking. Wow, Jennifer, I think you must have followed from a few of the other sessions that we've been doing before, because I love to use baking because it's something that we can all relate to. In fact, in the class, we kind of use a bakery as an example, because there's a difference between being a baker and running a bakery as a business. That's hopefully in the next couple of minutes, we'll begin to see and unpack what that looks like, as I'll be giving my personal experience and where I failed to understand. And if I only knew what I'm telling you now, I probably wouldn't be sitting in front of you. So maybe I should be grateful for that as well. And everyone has their journey. I loved the stories that were running before the session where Eugene was just talking about. Everyone has a journey, and there'll be a journey of failure, and you pick up and learn and pick up from there and grow as you go. Car entertainment, Nairobi in-car entertainment, wonderful. Tailoring, excellent. Kanini, thank you so much. Joanne is there. Home decor, thrifted, specifically thrifted. Mitumba, big industry here in this country. You guys are so powerful in the Mitumba industry. You shifted politics in this nation. The agenda of those who, for those who may not know, Mitumba is You're talking about the second-hand clothing business, which is massive as well. So we're going to have some discussion about that in property, agribusiness. Thank you, Nyambura. Thank you, Josephine. Here to discover you're in the right place. Josephine, you probably are the most no, let me just say you're in a good place, because if you start with the knowledge, then you make better decisions along the way. You find that there are some people in this room who've been in business for 5-10 years, and they'll be like, oh, what have I been doing for 5-10 years? That's always the feeling. However, for those who are doing that, if you're like me and you're doing, oh, like me, that's what me, I was, oh, what am I doing? What have I been doing for the last couple of years? In as much as, yes, you could have made better decisions with better knowledge, you have also over that period of time gained specific experience that you're still moving over this period of time. You've gained specific experience that is going to guide you as you go forward. So do not beat yourself up about it, all right? Don't beat yourself up. It's simply an issue that we're going to discover and unpack. Excellent. Construction, baby shop. Thank you, Mercy. Skincare. As you can see, construction. Judith is here just from Nairobi to discover as well. Lucy, right place to be. This is where to think about it. And if you know before you get in, and this, let me talk to Judith and who is it that I was speaking to just a couple of minutes ago? Also here to discover. I saw that just 1 minute. I think it was Josephine, I think. Yeah, if you look at the difference between mature entrepreneurship markets, and we look at the US as a good example, because they do have a huge culture of entrepreneurship. Why? Because they recognize that's the huge driver of business. So what tends to happen is there's knowledge around how the business works. And even if you don't have knowledge, there's a whole industry around it. When you talk about venture capital, when you talk about private equity, there is an industry that is ready to assist you. When you watch shows like Shark Tank, when you watch shows like The Lion's Den, what that shows you is there is an industry. There are people who are willing to help. And you'll often hear those who are investing saying, hey, I've got the experience. Hey, I've got the management team. Hey, why? Because they'll take your idea if it is novel enough and it has enough traction, and they'll give it the structure and support around it to allow it to thrive. Not only are they giving the structure, and when I say support, I don't just mean knowledge and management. No, they also have money. That's why you're able to see many businesses can function for a long period of time without breaking even and returning a profit, because they have sufficient funding capital to keep them going until they achieve that point. So that cultural shift is one of the things that we're going to get through. So if we can begin to move the needle a little bit and say, hey, maybe if you start a more viable business, finding the funding might be a bit easier. Why do I say that? Because we work with various organizations here which do funding, and you in the class in module, which one is it? Let me get it here for you. In module 10, raising capital, it's actually by an organization called Horizon Africa. They do capital raising. They across this continent and do deals in the tens of millions of dollars. Why? Because they now are looking for businesses that can be able to absorb that amount. And that's the difference. Many of the local businesses, so when you talk about such fund managers and those who are in the private equity and venture capital space, their frustration is there are not enough businesses to absorb the cash that is available. And so you find them, just like in the Shark Tank experience or the Lion's Den experience, when they do find a business, they'll fight each other for them, because it's the value that they see in there is highly useful. So excellent for those who are here to discover you are in the right place. Lucy, thank you so much. Tabitha as well, I can see you're here to discover. Yeah, network marketing, we'll talk about that even as we go. What is the viability around it, and look at it in more detail. Excellent. Look at this. In fact, that's part of what let me get started now on the content so that we can break this down. But I thought I'd just mention that to everybody who's written in. Look at that. Skincare, crafts. To Natasha, who said crafts. I'm telling you, nothing is nothing goes to waste. And I thank God for my experiences, because in my earlier business, which I'm about to take you through, I did a documentary series. I was a producer. The company that I was running was a production company, and I did a documentary series called Made in Kenya. And in that series, Natasha, I featured 2 crafts businesses that I had never seen, and I didn't even know what the business model was. And I just went in with, eyes open. And you think crafts is a small business? No, it is not. So I went in, and not even just 2, over 3 large crafts businesses that I had never even thought about. And one of the ones that really caught my attention is a beautiful company. Well, at least the work that they do. Actually, I just happen to have it here. Natasha, you're the one who has done this to us. There we go. I wasn't planning to do this, but I thought since you're here and you did it. It's a company called Nero, and they do, this is soapstone. So this is a soapstone bookend that is there. And I was like, just look at this. This is very different from what you see elsewhere, isn't it? It's very different from what is in the market. You'd see different, it's just a beautiful elephant bookend. And you can see there are 2 of them. Let me just put it back before I get in trouble for moving other things. Anyway, so what this lady had cracked, and I found it amazing, because she exports container loads of this stuff. Most of the stuff she makes is not even sold in the Kenyan market, right? She exports container loads of them. She's a brilliant designer. So what she did was she said, look, let's get, and you can see vibrant colors, nice, beautiful red, not like the normal soapstones that you go to, the Maasai market and things like that, Natasha. So when I met this lady, who the founder of Nero, she was just telling me through what she'd do is she'd make the design, make sure it's done well, do a prototype, then get the prototype to Kisii, where the soapstone is actually created. And down there, she'd have 1 or 2 people who she trusts, and then she just gets as many of the artisans there to produce. Then they bring it down. So they produce at that level of accuracy. You can see, and I did a whole video of how they actually craft the whole. It's amazing. So now what she shifted was, it's now no longer just an artisan trying to sell a product, but rather she was now able to say, hey, if we can manufacture these products by artisans and have a design that people can be able to purchase, now you begin to see the difference. Now we're not looking for 10 sales, but you're looking for 1,000, 10,000 sales, because now you've shifted the market. The other one that really shifted the market, my thoughts around this, and we talk about it in the class, was, I don't know how many of you are familiar with a company called Kazuri Beads. If you've seen Kazuri Beads, they do what they call ceramic beads as well. And I was like, you go to the high-end, malls, and you find Kazuri in many of the malls, and I'm like, how are they doing this? How do they do it? And they have over 400, at that time they had over 400 employees. I don't know how many they have now. I was like, how is this working? And when we went in is when we discovered they have essentially 80% export business, where they export simply just the beads as they are. And what they do is they export those exquisite listen to this, handcrafted. So when you say crafts, Natasha, and everyone else in the crafts business, handcrafted becomes really vital. So handcrafted beads, and the whole story of women from disadvantaged backgrounds, and they're supporting the community in that same way. They had a whole story around it. Go visit Kazuri Beads, amazing story. Anyway, found out 80% export business, and they just export the beads as they are. Now, do you see that it's the opportunity for scale, even when you think about crafts? And one of the areas that we can't get beat as Africans is our own crafts. You can't produce, well, you can produce African crafts elsewhere and trend, but you can't replicate what we do with the same accuracy and the same love and the passion. And if you can show authenticity of where it has come from, now we're on the right track. So wow. Lots of good stuff here to discover. Excellent, Abigail. That's it. That's what we're talking about. And we can get our heads around this business issue. Then we're solving problems, because when you think about business as an opportunity, what excites me specifically about business is exactly that, the freedom and the breadth of opportunity. So if you look through that list, I wanted you to see the kind of experience that you get in the class. When you come into the session, we've run this class now for what number of years is that, Ruby? You have to remind me how many years we've done it now. This is going on nearing a decade, isn't it? So Centonomy has been in business for over 14 years. So the Centonomy Entrepreneur, is it now 10 years? I think it is. The power of having a session in which we have 3 hairdressers in the room, 4 hardware owners, 5 consultants. So when we're doing group activities and having discussions, the networking opportunities that you have is just simply amazing. So that kind of experience that we have. But look at it. Look at that. If you go through the text, the chat that's been coming through, have a look at it and see all the various expressions of business. So that even if you're in the same business, crafts, you do it differently. And so definitely the design is different. Think about it as restaurants. Restaurants, the example that you come and learn in the class, I talk about my experience going to a shopping mall and seeing 3 businesses right next to each other, each one of them selling chicken. But the difference is how they do it, how they package and all that. So you have the opportunity not just to innovate and say completely new, no product like this has ever been produced. No. But to offer a product in a way that nobody else has. And even simply offering it at a price point that nobody else has, in a design that nobody else has. So the breadth and the breadth of opportunity is just simply amazing to me. And that's why I get excited by this class, because you begin to see the difference between simply just going for a job and running a business like what you guys are doing. And it's really given clarity so that you understand. Just here in Kenya as an example, we have over 14 million micro, small, and medium enterprises in Kenya alone. So if you think about that, that's about 1 in every 2 adults in the producing, what did I call, demographic, between age 15 and 64 is running a business. Just think about that. So if you meet 2 people in Kenya and they are adults, the likelihood is one of them is running a business. So even if it's, and especially when you talk about it, the side hustle mentality, that's what it is. So the opportunities are, if you can think of something and you can be able to sell it to someone, and that's what we're discussing today. If there's a problem and you can devise a solution to that problem that people are willing to pay for, then you're in business, right? Right? Okay. Maybe there's something in that, right? Maybe there's something in that we need to discover, because that's what I thought, as simple as that. If I can solve a problem, and solving a problem that I told you, it's not new innovations necessarily that is the issue. No, not bringing some new product to the market, but simply solving a problem. Like the kiosk that is just down the road over here, solve the problem of proximity. So if we needed some eggs for cooking right now, we can get in the car, drive out, go to the supermarket across the road, which will take us another 15 minutes, or we can just walk down to the kiosk here. And so what has the kiosk done? It's solved the problem of proximity. So those are some of the things you can be able to do. But is that enough? Well, that's what I thought until we started. And now I'm going to take you through essentially the history of my experience in business, so that you can see, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and probably maybe some of my successes, and see what we can learn from there. All right, so let's get into it. I thought it was just simply about solving a problem and being able to sell it. Let's chat about that, kind of break it down. So when I started my business, it's a production company, I had angel investors, wonderful angel investors who I am grateful to God for. And My parents. And many of us will start off from that perspective. And you might find that they're your angel investors, whether you call them that or not. So what I thought was, this was their investment. I figured their first investment was a 100K camera to start my production business. So it was a second-hand camera from the US. We did I did all the due diligence I could, found out what it was. Buying new was not going to be possible at that time, not with the budgets that were in place. So I was like, okay, let's get this done. Let's find what we can do to get started. And maybe that's a lesson that we can take out from this. What do you have in your hand to get started? Because as entrepreneurs, many times we're waiting for massive amounts of funding in order to get started. It may not take that. So that's about the investment, at least that I took at that point, and thought that was the only investment that was there. So what do you have in your hand, and who can be able to assist you? And begin with what you have. And you find many entrepreneurs start in that same space. But as I began to break this down, and I'm telling you my story as well, as I began to break this down and think through it, it wasn't just that. It was so much more. It was so much more. Why? Because when I started running my business, guess where I was living? My parents. Guess whose food I was eating? My parents. And if you watch the video, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, because there's lots of helpful material there. And just listening to it, even as I was listening before the session started, it begins to get you to think. Someone like Eugene Bogwa, who spoke at the last event that we had, he said, some people have a head start. I did, and I thank God for my head start, because I didn't have to do the full, savings. I had some savings that I was using for various things that were there, but I got support. But here's how to think about the investment that was actually there. As I assess it now, it was not just the camera. I had shelter, I had food, I had transport many of the times when I'd borrow a vehicle or, go and try and do something with myself. So when you're considering, and I'm speaking to those, remember we had each of us at different levels, those who are here to discover, my discoverers in the room, here's something to think about around that. We often don't raise enough capital to get to the break-even point, and we'll discuss that as we go forward, yeah? We often don't raise enough capital. Why? Because many of these things are thought of. I never considered that, guess what, if I didn't have a place to live, I can't produce. If I didn't have a place to sit, at least in my room, in my parents' house, I had a table, I had, I could place my laptop on it, I had a place to do the production, I had a place to make phone calls, I had a place to use the washroom, I had these are all things that we often don't consider. And so even if I was doing it from my parents' house, many of us in this room, and this is one of the things, this is why you must attend the class, because there are multiple times that I've seen the frustrated spouse come to me. Ask Ruby, who you're going to be speaking to as you register for the class. The frustrated spouse is the one who's saying, I am supporting this character. And my wife would have been here as the frustrated spouse. I'm supporting this character in his dream, or in her dream. When will it start paying back? Because you often don't see it, because you say it's our home, it's our place. No, if you didn't have it, you would have to have raised capital to be able to allow you to do the things that you're doing. That's it. And the truth of the matter is, when I think about it, if I had not been living with my parents, I wouldn't have survived 2 months trying to run this business. It wasn't there, because I didn't have the thought process at that time of what that capital would be allowing me to do. And we kind of break that down, especially as a startup capital, because even for those who have been in business for a long time, if you have a misunderstanding of what that startup capital should do for you, then you begin to eat into it, or you don't raise enough to take you to the next level. So it's possible to be in business, and please give me a thumbs up in the business, right? In the chat box, sorry, give me a thumbs up for those who've been in business for a while and it feels like you've just been mark timing. What does that mean? You've been in the same spot, like you're just selling and there's no growth. You're in the same. That's what happens when there's insufficient capital to be able to grow. And it's a principle about Stacy is giving me like 10 of the thumbs up. Stacy, we only have 2 thumbs, but I get what you're talking about here. If we misunderstand this idea of, Jerry, don't laugh at my colloquialisms here. I can use other words as well. I just wanted to see this idea. If we don't understand that idea of how capital thrives, then we can find ourselves in the same spot, because guess what? Yes, you're generating revenue, but revenue is just paying for costs. That's it. So pay costs, revenue, and there's no potential for growth. That was me. And that's why we're in this session together. So why? So I got cash, I bought the camera, and I started doing the pitching. I started going out to get work and doing all the things that we were trying to achieve at that point. And let me tell you this, I was an excellent project manager. Why? Because I'd been an employee before, and I knew when I had like a project in front of me, I was going, you take the resources that you have and you put them together and you pitch it, and you can be able to go and do that. So I knew how to pitch for the work. I knew that if I can be able to show this is the outcome that you're looking for, let's do it. Let's pitch for it, get the work as you're going to do. Not only that, I also knew what it would take technically to produce. So as a producer, you know, I need this number of staff members. I need this equipment to complete the task. I need this amount of time. Hey, all the excellent project managers who are there. Yeah. You know how much time it's going to take. You know the effort that goes into it. Technically, I understood that process, right? Next, I even knew how much it would take technically to produce. I knew. So now not just that, but the costing of production, because I had done production as an employee before. So what I was taking was my skills as an employee and trying to put them into my business. And I knew how much it would cost. How much does a cameraman cost? How much does a videographer cost? How much do they take to hire equipment over a period of time? How much time does it take? You know, how much does it take to edit material? I knew all this stuff. So let's actually do. Can I take you through my thought process? And maybe this will relate to you, because I want to give you the example, for instance, of event coverage. And this is how I would do it. I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but this is how I used to do it. I used to sit around and not chat. I don't want to open the chat box. I want to open my whiteboard. Here we go. All right. Let's see if this relates to, if you can relate to this. This is how I used to do it. So I'd kind of break down the cost. Obviously, I'm moving at the speed that I can move for now and doing as much as I possibly can. So let's say it's events, right? So event coverage. Yes, if my spelling is wrong, forgive me. Oh, it's changed. Event coverage. Good. So I knew this. So I'd go pitch to a client and say, hey, your school is having a sports day that's coming up. Sports days were a big part of my business at that time, right? So you have your sports day and you want photos, pictures, yeah. And you want video as well. Yes, edited. Let me call it the way it is usually called, edited videos. Yes. So that was the pitch. So you knew, hey, I would show an example of some of my work that I've done before. I'd be able to show them these are kind of photographs that you want to get out of it. You know, the dynamic ones, you know, students flying into the pool or whatever, running across the finish line. And then videos showing the experience that was there. Because that's what parents want, you know, they want to take home that you have to think like a parent. Remember, I told you I was an excellent project manager. So you're thinking like a parent. What would a parent want to see? And you pitch it to the client at that time. No problem. So you now begin to do your costings. I need a stills photographer. Yes. Stills photographer. And I know that if I was talking to them, please, this is not in today's money. So it was many years ago. So please don't judge me. I can see all the judgmental eyes ready to judge me. No, don't judge me on this. Okay. So we were, it would be about 5,000 bob per photographer. And if we're doing a project where it just needed one photographer, you need one photographer and videographer. And many times I would go on the shoot as well and carry an extra camera just to get those off the cuff moments that are there. So I knew I'd have one guy doing this. But in my costing, and you see, this is how we do it in business. Yes, in my costing, you don't cost exact, isn't it? You don't cost exact. So I'd say 6,000 per photographer. Now, This entire breakdown is not necessary for the client. This was for me to understand what am I getting out of this. So to the client, you'd give them an overall budget for what they're going to do. So after that, you'd have the videographer, yeah? And again, depending on how it was at that time, just estimate for the day about 5,000 bob also. Again, Waithaka being the entrepreneur, you don't charge that same amount. Now you put in how much? 6,000. So we're building on this. Someone should be doing the maths with me so that we can add that. We're at 6,000, 6,000. Next, now we look at transport, yeah, depending on where it is. Most of the projects that we're doing were not too far out of the city. Some of them one we adjust. But on average, you're talking about maybe about 3,000 for transport on the day. You don't charge the same. Yeah, so it was depending on how much you are going to go for it, you can be able to charge a little bit more, a little bit less. I knew to cost about 2,000. This was about 2,000 bob at that time, but you don't charge that amount. It's 3,000, okay? Next, then you'd say transport, then you say editing, because this is what takes time in the process that we're going to go through. Editing, the video, first of all. Now, this is the one that takes the most time that you're going to do, and you charge. So you put in a number. So 30K, there we go. And I'd say editing pictures. Yeah, photos, here we go. And you'd say another what? Now it would be a bit less because of the time that you're going to go through, but depending on how the work is being done and the expectations. So I would say, look, if I need to bring an editor on board, they're going to charge me 20,000 bob. Many times I'll do it by myself, right? You know how it is in business. So I knew if I was bringing an editor on board and they are going to just simply give me the edited photos, I could charge them they would charge me about 5,000 bob, yeah? So in my budget, because I knew I was the one who was going to do it many times, I'd still charge 25, even if I'm the one doing it, all right? Editing stills, then you have the printing. This was before, you can tell how long ago this was because you'd still have to do DVDs and various things that were there, printing and packaging, okay? All right, and I'll put that in and let's give it, now this was dependent on what was there, but on average, you're looking at about 6,000 bob, and then they pay per print as you're going through, all right? So, but obviously I'm not going to charge that amount. How much do you charge? Come on, you're in business, you charge a little bit more. So 10,000 bob, this is the project. So can we see the total there? Just check my maths with me. It's the number on the farthest end. So 6 plus 6 plus 3, like that. Somebody do it for me and type in the chat box. And this is how we do it in the class. So we don't, listen, we're going to go through this practically. It's not DVDs. Yes. Lulu, don't laugh at me. I used to sell DVDs. That's where we started. Yeah. So 6,000 plus 6,000 plus 3,000. We're doing this together. Plus 30K, because I knew what was going on there. It was just me who was doing the editing at that time. Plus 25K. Yes. Plus 10K. Thank you. All those who are with me, well done. For the mathematics, you are doing well. This bodes well for the class even as we go forward. 80,000. So I knew for the project, when you go and sit, you pitch, then you say, hey, give me some time to go and work out the costings because of what you're trying to do. You come back and say to the client, 80,000 bob. That was it. So I'll do my nice, quotation thing and send it through. And I'd say and it's simply quoting these pictures and edited video and give the number of DVDs for those who are laughing at me on the way. That you're going to sell, and it was mostly DVDs because even the photos, that's where the storage was going to be as well. Okay, you don't know what DVD is, a digital video disc, but 80K was now the process that we were going through. Now, this is how my thought, I don't know how many of you think like this, but this was my thought process. I can see what I'm going to make from here. I don't know how many of you can see it. Let's see if you can do the calculations with me. You can see how much I'm going to make, right? So out of that, we had an extra how much from the photography. Remember, I'll charge that guy, but he'll pay me. I'll get 6K instead of 5, so that's 1,000 bob. This was what I saw was coming to me, right? Plus plus another 1,000 for the other one, isn't it? Plus, what else were we going to do for the videographer as well? Transport, I knew there'd be 500 to 1,000 bob inside there. Okay. Plus, what else? Video editing, that was coming to me because I was the one doing the editing most of the time. Yes. And then what else? Photography. Now, on large projects like this, I would get a photographer to come in. So 25, so I'd be left with the 20K. You know, you just put in money for yourself, 20,000, okay? And plus printing and packaging, you know that you're going to get a difference there, and you're on that side and you're saying about 10,000. Not 10,000, sorry, 4. That's the difference, 4,000. Hey, those people who are fast like me, thank you so much, who are following along. That's 1,000 times 3 plus that plus 20 plus 4. Thank you. Well, I'm actually a photographer and you are way ahead of this. What is that? Sorry, I'm trying to get that comment. Because the strategy hasn't changed much. Well done. Okay, really? Justin, then you're in the right place because this is all wrong. Just so that you know, I was making many mistakes. If you have not changed the strategy, this is why I was losing money. Because this is how I was thinking. Wrong. But thank you for letting me know things haven't changed that much. Okay. Yeah. So in my mind, Waithaka has made 57,000 in my mind. From this project, I could see, wow, 57K, that will pay my rent for I don't know how many days. I can buy my, groceries and things. This will take care of me for a period of time. And as I look for the next project that is coming along the way. Okay. Yes, Jerry, this was wrong. Yes, it is. So as a project, there is some truth to this. As a project, there is some truth to this. And I want to do a quick test and just see this, because I can see many people have put now their hands up. It's hard to track as we're going through. Let me go to where we are. Let's do this. Everyone who's put your hand up, just put your hand back down. So if you had put your hand up, because I want to ask a question and then we get some interaction from you on this side, if you don't mind. So if you had put your hand up, kindly just lower your hand. It's that same button that just says lower hand, yeah? So I'm trying to assist for those who may not know have done it. I am trying to assist as well. Just lower your hand, okay? Because I want to ask a question, then get some response from that, because I also wanted to give you the experience of the class. So in the class, ladies and gentlemen, we'll all have our cameras on, so we can see one another and interact as best as possible. So we all have our cameras on and we're able to unmute without all this, business that we're going through, because this is a webinar format. When you have 400 people in a room, if we try to have all our cameras, to just be a mess, yeah? Because not everyone has that control. So don't worry, when you come in for the orientation next week, we'll take you through the Zoom etiquette that we're going to have to respect one another and work through. Simply to have over 400 people and try and manage that is just not possible. So here's how it would be. So we get to a point like this, and I would begin to ask you, and this is a question that now bothered me and why we're running this class. And so somebody raise your hand so we can hear your voice as we go. What was missing from this equation? And it is a primary part of business. Usa Mutiso, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. If I'm not, please teach me how to do it. Kindly switch on your mic.
Reinvestment. Reinvestment money.
That's correct. Mic is on. I'm not hearing anything. There we go.
Reinvestment money.
No, please. First tell me how to pronounce your name, because I probably murdered it.
Usla is just fine, but I'm thinking just fine. It will work for today. But
no, tell me how to do it, please. Please teach me.
No, everybody, let's just go with Usla for today. Let's just do Hustler for today. But I'm thinking reinvestment money, because that money, all of it, you can just take all of it. You have to remain some for putting it back to the business. So you have to have a cash.
Yeah, you're thinking. Can I hear from Mugambi after you, if you don't mind? But good try on that. Mugambi, talk to me. That's Beta Mugambi. Yep. What's missing?
Yes, it's Beata Mugambi.
Beata. Very good.
Yes. I'm concerned there is no labor, like the person in charge of the whole project, organizing and putting it together. There is no specific charge for that.
Well, I kind of figured it is in my costings for, you saw I put extra cash for videography, a little bit extra cash for the photos, but you're on the right track. We're almost there. Anyone else, what's actually missing from this? I'm really, really interested to see if anyone, you can raise your hand as we go. Not just about salary. No, my money is there. My money is there. I told you. I thought it was my salary when I'm eating, like when I'm doing this. So Ian, give it a try. Yes, let's see if I can get Ian to speak. It has disappeared. Okay. Ian, go for it. You can switch on your mic. Something is missing from this equation.
VAT.
Okay. Okay. So brilliant perception on it. VAT is a very important part. Now, depending on whether your business is required to charge VAT, because not all businesses are required. And especially at what point does the VAT charge check in? And that's why we do 2 sessions in the class on accounting. And this is now with a professional accountant, not Waidaka with his fake accounts that you're doing over here on the screen. He's going to take you through and show. So not quite there yet, but yes, if you are VATable, VAT is part of your business structure, then that would be necessary, but not quite there yet. There's something more fundamental than that. And let's hear from Cynthia. Cynthia, give it a try. Thanks, Ian. That was a good try as well. This is brilliant.
I don't know if somebody has answered. I've just joined. I think money to reinvest in your company.
Yes. Okay. Give it another name. You're the second person to say that. Well done, Cynthia. I think we're thinking different. We're thinking correctly in this same space. Okay, let's see if guys can call it there in the chat box. James, thank you so much, Cynthia. Profit. So let's all write this down. The goal of every business is to generate a profit. Write it down in case you've never seen it. The goal of every business is to generate what? Profit. And in this case, as I've just shown you right here, which is why my business it had to end up in failure at some point, was I was charging at cost. Really? Veronica, you're saying I didn't plow back the profits. Which ones? Think about it this way, ladies and gentlemen, and this is the difference between an entrepreneur and somebody who's self-employed. And I was self-employed, many of us are self-employed. I need to think, what does it take to produce a product or a service? And I've done that. So I've listed the costings here. I have done it. And I've kind of tried to be as detailed as I can be for a short session like what we're doing. So the thing is, why is this important? Because if I am going to run a business that is going to be able to multiply and a business that is going to be able to scale, then I should be replaceable in each one of these. So watch this, ladies and gentlemen, just so that we don't miss out on this. And this is a key point of what we're going to discuss today. So I wasn't the photographer, but if I replaced myself here, and I got another video editor because there's a project there's a second project available on the same weekend. Isn't that how you scale, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't that how you scale? You do a second project at the same time and be able to get a profit out of it. If I got an editor to come and do that, if I got another editor to come and do this, and I was the one responsible for doing, and I got somebody else responsible for doing this, Maimuna, it's not even, I'm not barely making any, I did not make any profit. The goal of every business is to generate a profit. What is a profit? Profit means that you're selling goods and services for more than it costs to produce them. Because if you're selling at cost, there is no benefit. And in this scenario, as you can see here, I was selling at cost. That was my story. I could not be replaced. And you come into the class and you talk about it quite a bit. Here's what we're discussing. If I am to be replaced, thank you so much. I can see people are giving it even other terminologies. If I tried to replace myself here, so if I replaced myself in each one of these, what would the business make, ladies and gentlemen? What did I make as the owner of this business? Absolutely nothing. Because now I have nothing. And this was my first mistake, not just a loss. I am doing nothing, zero. In fact, you're right, Fidelis. In fact, I'm losing money in this because I put in the effort and it is going down the drain. And it's because I was thinking, listen, I was thinking like an employee. I was self-employed. I was thinking like a hustler, not thinking like an entrepreneur. And that was a huge difference. So the first thing is you cannot sell a product for exactly what it costs. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Jerry, it's not even 3 or 7K per gig. Because remember, when you talk about 3 or 7K, remember I've not put there's no contingent, there's no real contingency here. Because you know, when you go out on this gig, something will break. You have to buy something. When you go out on this gig, the transport may not work out the way that you think. The printing and the packaging doesn't always work out the same way that you're thinking. So you're losing money, Jerry. So even if you think that's plus, anyway, I had put in that buffer. Let me even talk about that. Let's say everything worked out profit. I had put in that buffer on top of those costs for me so that I could eat. So I'm in business, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm in business, but I'm not an entrepreneur. And this is now where we now begin to think differently. So number one would have been, first of all, to put in a margin, a profit margin. A profit margin over which, if I produce this bottle here, for 50 shillings, I cannot sell it for 50 shillings. If all the plastic that went into it and the forming cost 50 shillings and the electricity and everything, I cannot sell it for 50 bob. If I sell it for 50 bob, I'm making a loss. I'm not in business. So I needed, first of all, to see what does it cost to produce this product or service? What's the cost? Over which to put in a profit margin. Lulu is saying clients who ask for discount should also take this class. Yes, but Lulu, let me respond to you. I was the problem in the market. Why? Because why did my clients come to me? Lulu, think about it. Guys, Lulu has made a statement that is vital for us to capture. She said clients should come to. Why were clients taking me on? Why do you think they would take me over all the other Matthews? I was cheap. Now, I don't know about you. Are you cheap where you are? So you can be cheaper, right? And get the business, but lose. That is why those businesses that were costing more, not affordable, cheap. You're cheap. Affordable is something that is valued. I undervalued myself. So how many of you are undervaluing yourselves, selling products or services at a rate at which it is not sustainable? If we don't get that point across, then that's why we are running this class called the Centonomy Entrepreneur. Because here's the point. You can have a brilliant idea, brilliant products, but if you're selling them, underselling them, you're going to miss out on it. You are undervaluing. So I knew I was, and that's the first mistake. I knew I was undervaluing because I knew the cost and I was essentially selling it at cost. That's it. This is what we are talking about. Jerry, get the business, but you lose. That is why we're in the same spot. And I could not be able to move forward. The growth in my business, because it did grow for a bit, what I thought was growth. The growth was simply because of my hard-headedness and my willing to go out and get. And we discussed that, by the way, in the program as I try and close this out. When we talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, many entrepreneurs didn't have this information, but they eventually discovered it. Why? Because they were hard-headed enough to say, you know what, I'm going to figure it out. Now, you can imagine if that person had the knowledge, how much farther forward they would be. Because an entrepreneur is one who goes and gets business. Business doesn't come to them. An entrepreneur is one who goes out and gets business. And so that's one of the areas I was good at, because as you can see, I can talk, right? And I can be able to, convince people generally. That's my job, and I'm pretty good at that. So I'd get business and I'd be frustrated that, hey, look at this. I'm getting business, but it doesn't move. It's not moving. So number one, the first rule of business is what? Profit. The primary goal of running a business is to generate a profit. That's number one. So if you're not even working in a profit margin in your business, then you're in trouble. That's number one. But some of you guys hit on it, and I guess you've been listening, and I hope this message gets out to as many people as possible and in this continent of ours, because we need to shift the needle. The second one is that I had no visibility of the true costs. And you guys hit on it. You did it. You got it. You got it. Because these are not the only costs. What we have described here, and I can even put it up here just so that we see it. Why aren't you letting me type? What costs we were seeing here, come on, open up. There we go. Were called direct costs. That's it. These were called direct costs. And I had visibility of them because I was not an entrepreneur. Remember, I was coming from the environment in which I'm an employee. So I was a good employee, but not a good entrepreneur. I had no visibility of the true costs because they are what we call indirect or other costs. And you guys got them. So I'm not going to waste time asking you what they were. Hey, I had rent to pay. And please, everyone who's saying I work from home, therefore I don't have a rent cost, you are cheap. Oh, oops, sorry. Ruby, I apologize. I shouldn't be this tough when I'm trying to get guys to sign up for the class. Let me take that back. You're misinformed, ladies and gentlemen. You are misinformed if you think that you have no cost for accommodation in your place. I didn't. You're misinformed, ladies and gentlemen. If you're working from a space, you don't live somewhere else. If you're not living in the air, you work from a specific space in which you're going to do it. That's what it is. So thank you for not underpricing Esther. That's brilliant. But this is the next part, and this is the next stage, which I didn't have an idea. I had no visibility of the cost of the space in which I was in. I had no visibility of my other transport. Can you see? Other transport. I had no visibility of the true marketing. I had no visibility of, thank you, accounting. I had no visibility because who was collecting this money? Who was doing the accounts, paying and making sure that it's moving and happening? I had no visibility of the work. Thank you so much, Noreen. Work. Come on, guys. No visibility of work. When we say work here, we mean the labor indirect labor costs. And this is the one that let me tell you, as an entrepreneur, if you don't get it right, you're going to miss out on it. I saw some of you write it down, and that's why I'm moving quickly now through all these ideas, because you have already said it. Who came up with the idea for this business? Who was coming up with the strategy? Who was sitting down and actually organizing all these? Thank you, somebody got it before. Who was sitting down and organizing all these resources to produce the outcome that was there? I always ask this in the class, and I've asked this before so that you don't miss out. If you think about any major business that is there in the world, who tends in those businesses? I want to see that now response in the chat box, please, if you don't mind. Who tends to get paid the most in larger organizations? Who are the ones who get paid the most? Who? In the chat, as quickly as possible. Think about a large organization. The managers. Because they're the ones that are putting together resources to put this thing together. And the reason why my competitors at that time would have charged between 150 and 300,000 for the project that I was talking about here is because they understood the cost. So no problem. Here's the thing. Please understand this, because I understand most of us are in early stage businesses, and that's why you need to come for the program so that we begin to address each one of these issues. But I understand that you can't charge as high as everybody else, but you at least need to know it. You need to know the value of the product that you're doing, so that even if you're doing the undercut, because that's, look, if you're entering the market, you need to do it. And even established businesses do the undercut. What they do is they do a discount. So they enter into the market at a discounted level. So they don't listen. When you see a product or a service on the shelf of a supermarket and you're seeing big discount, that means they understand the value of the product. They just want you to buy it, try it out. It is a marketing tool, and they have budgeted for that marketing. That is why it is at that level. So when you're offering your services for a lesser price, it is not so that you just simply stay at that level, but it's because you have understood that you're going to get into the market at a specific time. And because I had no visibility of this, it meant that there were many months earlier on, and let me not even just say, for majority of the time that I was running a business, that there was often not enough cash to survive the month. This is years of running business. Why? Because I had no visibility and I didn't understand this. And this feeds into everything else. This feeds into the fact that I could not plan in advance. I had no specific targets. Do you know the targets for your business? I had zero. I didn't have zero targets. I just simply wanted to make money. So you're looking for business, but I didn't know what size of business I needed to bring in. So that's not a real target. You're just aiming to bring in money. So if you get the contract, you get the contract. Good, thank God. And you move on. But what next? I had no visibility of that. So if I didn't know how much I needed to make the targets for that month, do you think my marketing efforts were going to be sufficient? No. Do you see that it all feeds together? I could not market sufficiently because I didn't know what the targets were. And so I couldn't put sufficient amount of time into it to get the amount of business that would get me to profitability. So if I knew what I knew now, I would not be seated here. Can we see now what that looks like? Let's work on it together. This is what I needed to know in order to make the decisions that were required for me to get through. This is what I needed to know. I needed to have visibility. I knew the costs, the direct costs that we're talking about, but I had no clarity on the way out. So let me show you what that looks like. And so when you come into the class, we're going to build out models like this that are helpful for us to see, plan, and work through. Okay. So in the example of the business that I was describing for you just now, in that example, just so that you understand, we would work in what is called a profit margin, right? Let me see if I can expand this so you see it clearer, okay? Would work in a profit margin, all right? So that we can be able to see this is the difference that is there. So why? Because the nature of that business was each of the clients would have a different outcome that they're aiming for. So it was difficult to have a flat rate. Okay. It was difficult to have a flat rate for everything. So you could say it's about 30,000 for coverage of this, you know, as an example. But because you have asked for X, and X extra, you wanted to have some prints that are different. So this is a charge for prints. So you'd have a different pricing for pretty much everybody who's there, okay? So each project would have a different amount. So as an example, this is simply an example of how you can do it, work in a specific profit margin for each size of project. That's one way of doing it. If you're running a project and let's say a manufacturing business, so you manufacture pens, for example, so you manufacture. So you can look at the market, and this is one of the, so we talk about this in the program because we do marketing separate from the accounting class, just think about it. So you can look at the market and say, okay, if I'm selling this biro pen, and the market for biro pens, the prices go between 100 and 200 shillings. If I entered the market and said, I'm going to sell this product at 300, there must be a really compelling reason if I'm trying to be competitive in that market. So I'd have to have a different market, what we call market segment. And we'll talk about market segmentation as we go through. I'd have to have a different market segment that I'm targeting specifically for a pen that should generally cost 200, but I'm between 150 and 200, but I'm selling it at 300. I have to have a really compelling reason. So if I'm just entering into the market and I want to be part of the players that are there, so I can differentiate myself from the other players with design, with the functionality, all those different things, and then price at about the same level. So the price is the same, the differentiation is in the other elements. What am I trying to say on this? If there is a price level already in the market and you know that you can meet that, so it is the difference between your production cost and that price level that is about the market rate, okay? So it's not simply about undercutting or overpricing, it's about measuring what that looks like. So if let's say the cost of producing this is, let's say 100 bob, then you know your markup is going to be 150, will be 50 shillings or 100 shillings, yeah, to get to the general market rate. And you put in an exact amount rather than a percentage, okay? So that's one thing just to think about, okay? So I would have thought about it this way differently and said, okay, so if I do a project at this level, smaller projects, the amount of effort for a smaller project is not so different from the larger one. So you imagine managing a few different things, but it still takes the same amount of time in terms of the day that you're there and you're doing all those various things. So if I charge the same amount for a small project that I do for a large project, then I'm losing out. So one of the thought processes that we went through in doing this, was to say, if it's a smaller project, still takes the amount of time, so you need to charge more for it. Hey, this is nothing new in business. Have you noticed when you go to the supermarket and you buy products in bulk, you get a discount? When you buy the smaller sachets, in fact, they make a lot of money from the smaller products than they do because they are saying it takes a similar amount of effort to produce. So charge more. So if it's small projects, we said, now give it a 30% markup, and larger projects, give it 20% so that it becomes more affordable. Remember, we're using different terminologies. But what that means is I must work in a profit margin. Okay. So if I did so, now we come into the session and you're going to come in and learn to build this out for yourself and figure it out, because everyone is going to have a different, you have different numbers. That's the beauty of business. I could show this to another photographer. Hey, I saw another photographer in the room, and they will have a completely different model because their outcomes and their inputs are different. Okay. But the principle, which is what we're learning here, is what works out along the way. I have to also now begin to figure out, because I eventually did move, by the way. Woo, ladies and gentlemen. I eventually did move to an office, okay, and we're sharing an office with a couple of other businesses. And then suddenly there's a rent cost, which I had never thought about before. Suddenly there are utility costs, which I had never thought about before. Security, garbage, what? So before you even get there, begin to account for them. Put them into your pricing model like what we're discussing here, because those costs will come. That's where it's going to happen. So put in a cost for the space in which you're working. Yeah, I put in a cost there. Put in a cost for utilities, transport, marketing, just put in a cost that's there. And then my work, which essentially, look, I'm running this business and I'm the one who's finding the solutions and everything. So in as much as I can get some money from the direct work, which I was doing editing and other stuff, I'm doing other things. What am I worth? Put a number. Now, listen, I don't know if you heard in the stories, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's going to really open up your eyes to different things. But you had, even if you don't actually withdraw the cash, it stays in the business, accounting for it begins to show you what the actual costs of running the business are. And when you don't withdraw, it is as if you have given the business capital. It was just not in cash form. It was your skill set and your abilities that you are sharing. Okay. So now we have it. So if you can see here at the bottom there, you can see the direct costs that are there, 175K. That's what it is. The YouTube channel name is Centonomy. Just go to YouTube channel and you'll see Centonomy and just subscribe, and you get lots of material on that as well. We use a lot of that even in the classes, but as much as possible to get the message out. Thank you for that, Rose. So 175 is my other costs. So this is now the part that we often misunderstand. The other part that is often mistaken, and you're going to come in and we'll do it together in the class, is to understand the break-even point of a business. I don't have enough time to go through this here, but I know in this class, there is somebody who had break-even, and their thought process, break-even, is when I will get back my initial capital investment. Yes. So I invested, like in this business, the investment was 100,000 shillings. So when will my business pay me back 100,000 as break even? No, that is not break even. So that we begin to understand the simple principles. The break even point is a point at which your total income covers your total costs. So in this case, the total income, you can see it here, it's the 250 plus the 416 at the top there, right? We've done this in advance because of time. Is exactly equal, yes, is exactly equal to what? The total costs. So if I remove the costs here, which is this, the costs are the difference between this and all of these other costs of 175, then I know I'm at the break-even point. Total costs equal total revenue. Why? Because at this point, I have made no money as a business. No profit, but also no loss, which is a vital point in business. Yes. So, Teresa, time spent is worked in as a labor cost. So you cost the time of your labor. Okay. And if you remember from the example that I gave earlier, when I was doing the breakdown, Teresa, and this is how we interact in the class, just so that you understand. Teresa, I had already worked in the cost of the time for the specific project, but I had not worked in the time for other work that is being done in the business, which is what I'm accounting for down here. So at this point, the business has not lost any money, but the business has also not made any money. I was at zero. This is called the break-even point, point at which total cost, total revenue are the same. So at this point, they are not. Because I did not understand this, it meant that my business could not begin to grow beyond this point. Because if I stopped doing some of the work that I was doing up here, right? That's a really good question, Simon. How do you quantify or qualify the time with value, right? So in the class, we'll break that down. That's a really good question. How do I know how much I'm worth? So we talk about a benchmarking process in the class. We also talk about choices that you can make. Let me give you one example just so that you understand, Simon. Some people just decide. And I know that sounds like hogwash. It's not hogwash. Some people just decide my value is this amount. And the only issue is this: can you find a client who's willing to pay you your value? And we'll discuss how to do that. So there's a benchmarking process, and also simply at some point a decision at which the question is, can the market absorb you at that price? Really good questions that are coming to. So in this scenario, now you guys are thinking like business people, right? I know that if I do business, can I remove this so I can see the totals here at the bottom? If I bring in 666,000, the total revenue there, 666,000 per month, I don't make any money. Let's see the entrepreneurs who are in the room, in the chat box. What would the target for your business then be for the amount of revenue you're going to bring in? Remember revenue is cash coming in. That's just the total cash coming in. Yes. Rita, I will not unless I plan the way I'm planning here. Good, I can do 10 projects and eat all that money, which is the mistake I'm trying to stop us from making. Guys, what would the targets for your business be? Knowing that if you make 666,666.66, which is what's there at the total at the top there, the business has made no profit. Remember what was the primary part of the profit? What would it be in the chat box? Thank you. Thank you. Being as realistic as possible, you know you cannot aim for this amount. Because if you do hit it, that's the thing that is going to happen. So you aim over and above this amount. That's a key factor to the whole thing that we're discussing here. If I don't get there, if I don't get to that point, so what happens now, ladies and gentlemen? Do you now begin to see? This is now the issues that we're going to face along the way. If I had no visibility of this, I could be aiming to make $500,000 a month. That was my target. $500,000 sounds like a lot. At the beginning of my business, I had never made $500,000. In the first few months, I'd never gotten to that level. So $500,000 is my target. If I hit $500,000, I would still be in loss position. Do you see? I would still be in a loss position, having hit a target that I've never done before. Because you're going blind. And for you in your business, if you've never calculated this and worked it out and actually know the truth, you could be bringing in more money, and I was, and still be making a loss, simply because I have no visibility of the costs. So ladies and gentlemen, if we don't get this fundamental part of your business right from the beginning, this is where the mistakes now begin. And it only gets compounded even as more money comes. Can I tell you the rest of the story just so that we understand where we're going from? Obviously, the location, you see that I told you, In the class now, we're going to have much more detailed discussions than we're able to have here. And the interaction is much more than what I'm able to do here. When I'm managing 400 people plus, I have to move at a specific speed. But here's the thing. Would the location of your business influence the price of the product? Yes, it does. Because the location has a cost implication. Not only does it have a cost implication, but it has a brand implication. So when you come into the class, you're going to be now dealing with people who are much better at me at brand, who sleep, eat, drink, and everything brand, so that you're able to see that it is not simply just about the direct costs. When we start talking about luxury products and things like that, and we'll discuss that in the class, if you price it poorly, luxury products have the correlation between the cost of producing the product and the actual final price is almost negligible. Because people are not buying the product, they are buying a brand. And that's one of the next levels that we're going to discuss in the program. Just so that you understand, the entrepreneurship journey is not just talking about numbers like this. Numbers is just one of them. So the numbers you have to get right in order for you to be able to move. But in the entrepreneurship program, let me just get it here for you. We come into this area of marketing because here's the thing. If you can convince your client to pay more, why not? And many of the luxury brands, you're not paying the price of the cost of that product or service. No, you are paying for the value of the brand that it is carrying. So think about it like this. Think about the clothing industry. You get a shirt like this in the clothing industry that will cost you maybe 1,000 bob, okay, new. You go and see a similar shirt like this, but it has a guy riding a horse, or it has a crocodile brand on the corner. Same material, looks exactly the same, everything just has that, and that will be charged at 5,000 or 10,000. So you're not paying then at that point for the item, but you're paying for what? The brand, which we discuss here as well. This area of marketing and digital marketing, marketing now begins to think through the price, positioning, the product, all those various elements that are there, taught by somebody much better than me in this specific area. So allow me to try and move on from where we were. So let me talk about now. So I missed that point. So profit was an issue. I had no visibility of my real profit margins that were there, and I'd never done the calculation. So I therefore had no targets for my business. And so if your business has no targets, or in my case, I had incorrect targets, because I had this, remember I told you that number that was in the air, the 500,000 that was in the air. Yeah, that one. I had it there. Did it mean anything? No, because I had not done the calculations. So incorrect targets or no targets, you're in the same boat, right? And sometimes incorrect targets can even be those ones that are too far. The business has no potential to get there. You have there is no correlation between that target and the potential production levels of your business. Makes no sense. So you have to work them out properly. Can I go to the next level now of the problem? So listen, because, and this is hard for me to admit, ladies and gentlemen, because it's really, I'm showing you my failures, yes, and what I didn't understand. Throughout this, because I was always constantly behind, it meant that, so you're living with your parents for a while too long, and then eventually when I did move out, got married, now you're living with your spouse, and your spouse is putting money into your business as well. That's it. My wife was doing that. So for a period of time, because I didn't have that costings plan and everything in place, it meant that she was now forced to do the same thing, to that support level. So it was capital coming into the business that was not intended for that. So let me show you what happened now when you got the next major project that was on the way. So it was to sell to a broadcaster. So this was a big deal. I pitched to a company. I produced a pilot for a program, the one I was telling you, the one that the documentary series that I was doing, and I did. So first problem, needed to have a registered company. So I pitched, and then I said, it's just me, no, or we can't do business, right? So there was a level to which my business could not grow because I didn't have the right registration processes in place, which is why we spent time talking about the legal implications of your business. It's a special class that you're going to go through with one of our, with a lawyer who's going to take you through and understand what are the expectations that I, so was not formally registered. It had the business name, but that was it. So it needed to be a limited liability company, needed to have a PIN number as well. So I couldn't do, my business could not move to the next level simply because I didn't have those things. The other thing that was coming up was this new monster called credit. All right. This new monster called credit was the next thing that was coming up, and I had no way to get ahead of this because I was not building reserves because there was no profit, remember? And remember when we talked about it, there was the gross profit and the net profit, which are not the same thing. So we address that when we come into the class. So I was not building any reserves. And so this idea that I will produce a product, give it to you, and then wait a month before you pay me was also problematic, which meant for periods of time, again, I had to draw cash from elsewhere, my savings, from my wife, from other places. And anyone of you is in the room who is supporting someone or is being supported there, please, let's learn from this. So what did I do? Hey, get a couple of friends together and we formed a company. No real thought process around what relationship are we going to have? What value are they bringing? Are they bringing any value? Are they putting money into the business at all? Look, we were young. We didn't understand at this point. And at that point, we thought there would be developments along the way. We did. I did. But it just worked out they were at different places. So I have a group of directors who are part of this business who really were not adding value, not through any fault of their own, but simply because they were at a different place. So all I needed was that. So pretty much the directors that we put together were there in name, and that was it. Not through any fault of their own or mine, just simply because we didn't understand. So when you come into the class, we'll talk about it in the legal class, okay? Module 12, but we also talk about it in the raising capital space. Because anytime you bring on board, when you bring others into ownership of that business, it has a legal implication, but it also implicates your wealth creation journey. And I know that you're in business to generate wealth. Isn't that your goal? And so if you miss out on this understanding, then you find yourself in a different place. So that's where I was. So I just got into the business with the friends that I had. We just formed, yeah. Also, I had to borrow from savings, my wife, as I said, as we're going there. So there were issues with what we call cash flow management, which is why we spend a lot of time in this program on the money issue. Because not just understanding whether I'm making a profit or not, or it's profitable, or I can eventually be profitable, but also how do I deal with this issue, as I said, of 30-day poof, and those who do work with the supermarkets, 90 days. What do you do in that? So we introduced a class into the program called working capital. Because for many businesses, you have to be able to figure out where is the cash that's going to allow me to function while I'm waiting to get paid. How do we use overdrafts as an example? How do we negotiate with clients to make sure that we get maybe some payments in advance so that you're able to survive until the full payment comes? These are all factors that we discuss in the accounting working capital classes, because that one was specifically, how do you survive in business? Because you have to become like our brother from South Africa, Mr. Vusi Tembekwayo, talks about. For many businesses, you have to become like a bank. Essentially, what you're doing is managing two areas. You're managing the client, you're managing your inflows as well, and your debt, the credit that you're paying for. No idea about that. And so now I was facing this and had to go into that same space. Worst problem of all. And this one I take full credit for, because I had no picture of what the cost of running the business would be over time. As I said, I was essentially self-employed, which is why I'm so passionate about this. I want you to move out of self-employment to become entrepreneurs. I want you to become an entrepreneur, because when you are an entrepreneur, it not only empowers you, but it empowers others in the community and builds this nation and the nations of Africa. That's what we want to do. We want to build Africa from that perspective. And I was very insular. So if I was making money, I was making money. If I was not making money, I was not making money. I would, all these, I didn't have any real employees because I couldn't afford them and I couldn't plan for them. And so everybody was on a contractual agreement, and that's not growing the economy. We need more and more people to be employed. And many people shouldn't be entrepreneurs. We should be supporting other entrepreneurs who are doing their businesses. So here's the worst part. When I did get eventually paid and I would survive, I'd survive until that point. I did sell, you can imagine I sold a documentary series. We eventually did over 50 episodes where I got to go and visit different businesses, mind-blowing stuff. Sold it, not sold it, licensed it, which was another thing that we need to talk about. In the legal class that we discuss here, we talk about ownership and rights. And for many producers like myself, ownership and rights is one of the areas you have to watch out for. Copyright. Because what is it that if I produced and sold it to the broadcaster and had no rights to it, they can continuously make money from my product and I continuously lose out. So the agreement had to be on a licensing period. So I did license it. I still own that product and it's still making me some money somewhere. Okay, this is years later because I owned the intellectual property rights. So we'll discuss IP rights and the way that you have to watch out to make sure that you're not selling yourself short. But I got paid, and I got paid in dollars and made the mistake of you traveling to where dollars were. So there was some personal part of it, that the travel to the US with the money that came in. But I was also thinking to myself, hey, I can travel and be able to purchase equipment at a much cheaper rate to bring it in rather than trying to import directly. So you see my thought process. I can go buy a new laptops. I won't be charged duty as I come in because it's my personal. I can buy a few cameras. They'll come in as my personal. You know what I'm saying? Hey, come on, business owners. So you always find a way to solve the problem that you're facing. So that was me. There I was carrying stuff from the US, different things that were coming in. And I spent it thinking I now have capacity within my business, because you're always dreaming about, if I only got that. This is for the photographers in the room, the camera folks. You're always thinking, if I can get a better camera, I can get better shots and all those things. Look, cameras change every single year. It is your skill set and your ability. What are you able to do with what you have that was the difference maker? But I thought if I have a new camera, a new laptop, whatever, all that's going to change everything. What I didn't recognize, and that was the final mistake I wanted to share with you, is that my clients don't care what the programs were shot on, so long as they look good. Hey, were they buying with the old camera that I had, the second-hand camera that I want? Yes, they were buying. Was I able to sell? Yes. Did they care now that I came back to the same clientele, ladies and gentlemen? I would come back to the same clientele that I was selling to before and tell them, suddenly now it's going to cost you an extra 10, 15, 30,000 shillings because, I have a new camera. No, just give me the old camera. So I bought equipment that the business was not ready to absorb yet. Worst of all, I bought high-end equipment that I couldn't even use. Because I bought a drone, those flying helicopter things. And this was now later on, after the initial purchase. Now this was later on. I told you I went through many things. When I imported it, it finally landed here. Literally within a month, they were banned because some horrible person went and flew over where the president was at that time, and they were banned. It was in the newspaper and you could not use them. So I purchased equipment that now was sitting on the shelf. Anyway, long story short, I was always thinking that it is the improvement on technology that is going to result in a higher return from my clients. What I didn't recognize is that those are different clients than the ones I had. So we spend time in the class, in the class on the entrepreneurship mindset, design thinking, which is module 1 and module 2, as well as module 6, which is the marketing class, and module 5, the structures class, on understanding your customer segment. I was trying to sell to the wrong customer a product that they didn't want. I had already gotten a couple of schools that were continuously with me. In fact, that's how I got involved with Centonomy, because Centonomy was just a slight leap from the schools that I was dealing with. I remember I started producing content for Centonomy behind the camera. That's the story on how I got here. So I used to produce the videos that you see there. Now we have a whole team that does that. But I was the guy supplying Centonomy before Washeke had the team that was doing it. So that was a leap. Centonomy was not bothered that I was using an HD camera versus an SD camera, so long as it was showing the right stuff. And so I had purchased equipment that was for the wrong customer segment. And if I was purchasing that equipment, if I had a strategy to meet the right customer segment, then we would be in the right place. So in those 4 classes, we discuss, is your product being aimed at the right customer? Because ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. Everyone can buy your product, but not everyone will. Take that home with you. Everyone can buy your product, but not everyone will. Who will is your specific. Something happened. Am I still on? Hello, hello.
Yes,
okay.
Wedaka, you are.
Oh, good. No, I disappeared on the screen, so I was just wondering what happened. So here's the thing. If I have not identified who the target market is, I can spend a lot of time trying to sell a product to people who don't want it. Instead of doing that, shift the strategy to sell the product to the people who want it, and you can then develop a different product for a different market, and that will take a different cycle to get through. So ladies and gentlemen, I was spending time running this business with no clue as to what I was doing when it came to business. This is it. If we get into this space, let me tell you, an investment of less than 60,000 shillings so that you don't make a loss of 100, 500, a million, worth it. If I had this knowledge that I'm going through with you now, before I started that business, I probably would not be seated where I am. Because I would have, that year I told you that we got paid and I traveled and I bought equipment. The amount of money you made from that initial licensing of the program could have funded the business for 8 months. But what happened was I got paid, we traveled, bought equipment, and the very next month, 2 months after the money came in, I had to go out and search for more business in order to stay alive, because I got excited by a lot of money. I don't know how many of you have ever sat down with an entrepreneur and wondered, this person has just got paid 2 million, but they look very peaceful, like nothing has changed. Why? Because they have seen where that 2 million is going, and the 2 million is not going into their pocket immediately. They're grateful, yes, but what they're seeing is what the possibilities are. So one of the things that you're going to discover in the program is that it will disabuse you of the notion that large amounts of money mean a lot. No. Yes, they do, but not in the same way. They mean a lot if you're self-employed. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, let me just be very clear. You can make a lot of money being self-employed, but it is not sustainable. Neither is it sellable. If you heard Leonard Mudachi speaking before this, those who came in early, he was just saying, build a sellable business. Why? Because then it is an asset. Ladies and gentlemen, why is it vital to have an asset? Because an asset pays you whether you work or not. And those who create businesses that are surrounded by them, they are self-employed, which means you are an employee still, just you have employed yourself. You're not making money while you sleep. You can't sleep. So you can be making a lot of money, but it is dependent on you. You have yet to cross over from the hustler to the entrepreneur. That's what we want to build. The structures, the capital, and the procedures that will help you build a great business. That is an asset that puts money in your pocket rather than the way that we're talking about here. So an investment, 1,000 bob today to register. Always when we have our events, we usually give a discount on registration because you have given us your time. So we respect that. So take advantage of that, because when you come tomorrow, it's 2,000 bob to register. So take advantage of that. Save 1,000 shillings by registering today with 1,000 bob. And then the rest of the program will be run starting next week on Wednesday at 6 p.m. So it's 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So the classes are slightly longer than the session we've done here because there's a lot of content to get through. You can imagine, this is just over an hour that we've been spending time together. And we are at this level, okay? And then on Saturday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Starting next week, Wednesday, and then Saturday. And it's the same class, all right? The same class runs on Wednesday as it does on Saturday, because we know you're busy and we know things change, but we're trying to make it as flexible as possible so that you don't miss out, all right? This is the format in which it has been done, but there is a slight difference, okay? So we use Zoom, but we don't use the webinar format right here because you can't see one another. We're too many. And also you don't have control on how you interact. So when we're running the class, it's much easier for you to chime in and say, hey, well, I didn't get that point. I can see all those comments are coming in, and it's hard for me to manage that because we're a huge number in the room. So in the class, we're fewer, all right? So we're able to chime in and just say, hey, just explain that again. What about this example? And we have discussions so that we're able to build on it, all right? So the classes are starting then. It is for these 14 modules that we're talking about here, starting next week, and we go for 14 weeks, one module per week, because we need to get into the details of each. You actually have to go and do the work because it's not head knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. When we do a spreadsheet like this, you go home and do your spreadsheet, because that spreadsheet is not for the sake of knowing, but it's for implementing in your business so you can grow, okay? Then you come the next week and there'll be more work and more work, but we'll help you with the process to be able to go through that. And the benefit at this time is also we recognize you don't always have all the cash at once, so you don't have to pay the full 57,000 shillings at once. You can pay it in installments. So you can pay 20,000 by next week, which is the first installment. Then 4 weeks later, a month later, you pay another 20,000. And then the last one is 17,000. Okay, it gets easier along the way. But the commitment is where it begins. Let me tell you, when you get into the class, you will be waiting for the next session. That's what it is. So to register, it's only 1,000 bob, as you can see there on the top. For those, we'll take questions after this. You can take a quick screenshot of this, those who are interested in getting in, and I can see so many of you already making that choice right now, and that's excellent. Please do, because it'll make a difference for your business. Come and try and see. Now you can see, even this small session, I can, okay, maybe am I thinking too highly of the work that we've done over this? Guys, have you learned something in this session that's worth your time? Give me a thumbs up if you have learned something, even in these few minutes that we've been there. Yeah? In the chat, just give me a thumbs up. If you have, good. Now you can imagine, and this is just me. The trainers that we bring on board are not Centonomy employees. So we go into the market and we look for people who are experts at marketing, digital marketing. We look for people who do fundraising and do mergers and acquisitions so that we can build on what we're talking about here. So don't just come for these free sessions and things you think you've gotten it. Barely. The other difference when it comes to the classes, ladies and gentlemen, is you receive notes in advance and you have these documents with you, like that spreadsheet. You have one with you ready for you to work on at the same time. So we're not in this just to come and just share just randomly. This is it. Jerry is asking, are the classes online? This is how we run the class. This is why we gave you a taste of it, so that you can see the experience. This is how it is. You go through it. So you share spreadsheets. We share examples through notes that are there. We'll put videos up as you saw at the beginning. We've given you an experience of the class so that you know. So take advantage of it and make that choice today. Start, give it a try. Because we're paying in installments. So if by, I'm yet to see, Ruby, I don't know if you've seen, I'm yet to see somebody who paid the first installment and got to module 3 and said, no, this is not for me. No. In fact, we tend to get to module 14 and people are coming back and saying, hey, where is module 15? Because we still need more. And that's where the long-term support that we're going to have with the alumni network that we have. When you finish the program, you become part of the Centonomy alumni, in which we have continuous learning abilities for you. And you can see, I can see many of our alumni in the class who are in this session who are here with us as well. So make that choice. We're going to leave a bit of time now to take a couple of questions, because I know there's lots that has been coming through. So as you're doing that, as you're making that payment, just take a quick screenshot of it so I can go through some of the questions. We'll use the Q&A tab for that. So if you can type your question in the Q&A, we'll start responding to them here. And then after I've gone through, there are not too many here. Once I've gone through that, in case somebody would like to raise their hand and speak to me, that would be great as well. We can take a couple of questions like that. Actually, let's do that first quickly. Sharon, your hand is up. Sharon Mungai, your hand was up. You can unmute and ask your question before I go to the ones in the Q&A section. Sharon Mungai, your hand is up. Did you want to say something? You can unmute and say hi. Okay, no. So let's go back and now begin to go through the questions that we were going to do. Hi, my cosmetic business at least doing well, but I lack saving skills. Yes. So brilliant. Every business needs savings. Why? Because not every month is going to be the same. Not every season is going to be the same. And all of us have gone through that over the last couple of years. So savings are useful for the business so that in difficult times, you're able to draw on them and help you to go through. So when you have poor projections of the business, and that's what we're trying to do, business projections, what I was showing you on the screen. If you have poor projections, then it's hard for you to be able to save, because the money that comes in, just like Mr. Waithaka here in front of you, where the money came in, you spend. So we're going to help you to do that. Excellent question. Janice is asking, oh, you're here to learn. That was not a question. So we've got it there. How can I sell at a rate sustainable? I sell products. Wow. So the process of marketing is one that is dynamic. When I say dynamic, that's a really good question. When I say it's dynamic, I mean that it is constantly changing. The things that customers expect and hope for constantly change. And so you have to be in constant contact with your customers. So one of the tools that we use is customer feedback. And you will see this, you'll experience this when you come into the class. We are always asking you, how do you feel? How did you experience that class? Please tell us, rates for the class, because we must always be adaptable to the customer needs. So if you want to be sustainable in your selling of products, you must adapt with those customer needs. And we'll be discussing that as we get through the class. So Waithaka, how will you know what amount should be allocated to rent Wi-Fi charges when working from home? You do estimates. This is Hafsa Musumba, you estimate. So you can say, if I were renting a space like this elsewhere in this estate or in this housing community, what would it cost me? Put a cost there. Okay, so do your best to estimate. Estimates makes a difference. They're not exact, but at least they give you visibility of the cost. And with lack of visibility is where you find yourself in a tough position. Okay. Really good questions that are coming up. So estimates are powerful. When you're unsure of the cost, put an estimate, yeah? Is there a discount for the Centonomy alumni? Yes, there is, Faith. Yes. Ruby, remind me, what's the discount for alumni who've done 101 who are coming into the entrepreneur program?
It's 5% of the tuition fee.
Very good. And they're already getting 1,000 off for this, for coming into this session. So Faith, join in. Do you cover when to hire employees? Yes, as we're discussing here, we have a class on structure and strategy. Structure and strategy is about that process. In order to scale, you have to be able to do so. But often an issue with scaling is capacity. Where is the capacity to do so? Is there someone else who can do what I am doing? And many times we find ourselves in a position where people don't do what you do. So yes, we discussed that. Yes, is saving part of the other cost. So most of the time, McKenna, you're going to save what we call the net profit from a monthly basis, yeah? And over time, you put that into reserves for the company. And we discussed that so that you're able to clearly see the difference between it. That's usually how it's done. But there are multiple ways of doing it. Could be one of the ways, but generally, rule of thumb, that's how it's done. Fidelis, you had a question you'd like to ask, and you can do so live now if you don't mind. Fidelis Kiarie, you can unmute because your hand is up, and I'll take your question. Don't worry, we'll get used to the whole Zoom etiquette business that's going on. Oh, so there wasn't a question. No problem, Fidelis. I can see Simon wants to ask as well. Simon, go ahead. You can just unmute yourself. Hi.
Yes, I've actually dropped on the comment section.
Okay. But finding it sometimes is a bit difficult. Why don't you ask the question?
So I wanted to request if you could give us a simple framework for pricing.
Yeah, so pricing is, wow. You will see pricing is covered in 4 of the classes because it is not just one thing that affects pricing. So market affects pricing. Marketing affects pricing. When I say market, I'm talking about your clients. What are clients willing to pay? Marketing also affects pricing because if you are able to convince a client that there's a specific price that they're able to pay, that's part of it. Number 3 is what we went through here. If you do not know the cost of the production of your product or service, you're in trouble. So you have to recognize what the cost is above which you put a margin on it. So there are multiple factors that come into the pricing section. But as I said, pricing is one of the most fluid parts of business. Yeah, if you're able to convince a customer to pay more, you're in a better position. But you cannot sell for less than what it took to produce. Plus, you need to be able to sell sufficiently so that you return a net profit. So, Simon, there are multiple factors. That's a really good question.
Thank you.
Very good question. All right. So Faith has asked, is it advisable to start a business with a loan? Let me give you a hard, sharp answer and then soften it if you don't mind. No. Why? Because businesses tend to take time to get to the break-even point. Problem with taking a loan to start the business by itself is that loan requires repayment immediately. I steal from him because he speaks really well. Please follow him as well. Vuzi Tembekwayo. In one of the speeches that he spoke, he said, business at the start of a business, you need patient money. Patient money. For example, the start of my business with the cameras and stuff, my parents have never asked me for that money back. That was the most patient money. But by God's grace, I'll repay over time, okay? What you need is patient money because if you start repaying immediately, then there can be issues with cash flow. Now, if you have another source of income, so this is where the side hustle thing works. If you have your salary, which is helping you establish this business, so that's why you've borrowed, the salary is powerful. Like if you're working somewhere else and that can help you repay. That's why I was not I will not give a hard and fast answer. So I said no in general, but if there are other sources of income that are helping you to repay, it can work. Yeah. So we'll talk about that as we go. From the spreadsheet, could you go back and explain the profit margin percentages? So in short, Doris, these were percentages that I came up with because I knew I had to sell for more than what it cost to produce. I knew the cost. So what I said was, because each project is different, you can put a percentage margin. Okay. With the percentage margins, I said for smaller products, you want to charge more because that's where the effect is going to be seen. The amount of work is greater and the effect is the same. So you charge a little bit more for the smaller revenue projects and a little bit less for the larger projects to keep them affordable. That was the logic behind it, but that's not the only way to work out profit margin. So we discussed that in a lot more detail when you come into the class. Really good question. Would you mind giving a simple framework on, oh, that's good. That was Simon's question. Really good question. What considerations would you make when offering discounts? A discount, think about it like this, as marketing. Okay. You have caught me here, Nyambura. Look at that screen. When we say 1,000 off, it is marketing because we recognize we have a good audience in front of us. These are ready. You are a ready buyer, Nyambura. And so if you're ready and you're sold on the product, like hopefully you are by now, if I give you an incentive of a slight amount off, you're more likely to take it up now. So part of the reasons for discount is to push a ready market over the edge. So you're absorbing that cost in your marketing budgets. Just remember that's what you're doing because you're selling for less than what you normally do. So you're absorbing that into that space, but it is usually to make that final push, which is why we offer a discount like now in a session like this, because we recognize if you have given us your time, you're a ready buyer. So we want you to be able to jump over on that same way. So how do you determine a monthly salary for CEO when you are not making any profit? So we talk about this, about understanding value. And in the class, I want people to understand, and I'm looking at you right now where you are. You are valuable. Your time is valuable. Many of you are employed, and your employer is already paying you because you are valuable. So let's begin to value ourselves and say, for the work I'm doing, if I was working elsewhere, that's one of the frameworks you can use. What would I be paid? And then from that perspective, you can begin to work it out. Now, will you get your dream salary immediately when you start running your business? No. So there are other factors to consider, but you need to value yourself. Factors like what can the business achieve and what other workflows are coming through there. Really good question. Selling a product after factoring the cost of production, most of the times clients pull away. How best can we solve this? We don't sell at market price. Here's the fact, and I told you, if we have 14 million MSMEs, we're all undercutting each other. And that's why they never move from being an MSME. So it's about, for you, it may be to say, can I identify a true market, the real market in which I can sell a product at that price? Because if you continue to sell at below market price, you're not going to make a profit. So there's some tough decisions. You may use this, and so that we don't run away from this, you may use the business that you're currently running to save up some money because you're making that money. So that 57,000 I was making, I was saving some of that money. If I saved some of that cash over time, I can be able to think more critically and have made a business model that is profitable rather than the one that I was doing. So if you're continuously selling at below market price, you can't move from that perspective. Patricia, how do you know what to value yourself when still being realistic in the current market? Yeah, so we go through, in the class, we'll go through what we call a benchmarking process. That's one way to do it. But let me tell you, it is also really powerful when you're able to value yourself and to say, if somebody else was paying me this amount, then that's what I'm valued at that point. So we'll give you that when you come into that. We'll get into a deeper discussion about that. Hi, I'm highly interested in a career business and barely surviving. Can you request for more flexible installments for the tuition fee? Hey, Jeffrey Otiende, please have a chat with Ruby. She may be able to assist you on that, yeah? Let's see what we can do together. Listen, you always ask the question first. I may not be able to answer everybody's individual, but do make the request and we can see what we can do. For a beginner, is it okay to join this class or to start with the Centonomy 101 class first? If you're interested in getting to business, please sign up for this class. Because in the Centonomy 101 class, we talk about personal finance and investment, personal financial planning. The skill set of running a business are completely different. So if you're getting into business, Lillian, please sign up for the entrepreneurship program. This is the one that will help you most in that scenario. Mary, I'm in new business and I'm struggling with pricing. We discussed pricing, I told you, in 4 different classes, because there are some rules around pricing that you want to measure, but then you have to work around them in conjunction with other issues such as marketing, such as the market, and such as the costs of the product, and also what you're able to convince your clients to do. We'll assist you with that. Fear not, Mary, come into the class. I deal selling IT products. Sometimes I have a good profit margin. It's hard due to the nature of goods I sell. What is the best way? So what are they called? FMCGs, fast moving consumer goods. Margins tend to be very low, very small margins. So what happens is FMCGs are volume products and services, yeah, volume. So usually the shift for many businesses that are in that same space, Martha, is a model that begins to take into account volume. Are we together? How do I sell 10 times more? So if I've got it working in this space, can I get funding to open 3 other stores so that we're able to multiply the amount that is being sold? So we talk about that in the class when we discuss the issue of pricing and volumes, because some businesses just don't work on low volumes. Yeah, the margins are too small. So volume matters. Beth, will we get responses tailored to my specific during the course? As you can see, this is how I'm trying my best in the time allocated to us. In the smaller sessions, we're able to respond. You hand in assignments and can be able to reach the trainers, Beth, individually. So yes, you will. Yes, to your specific pain points, yes. Rental stall for 5 years. I still feel I'm struggling with my expenses. I give and trying to make more of them to create more income, and stranded now. How do I budget money and attract, grow, and develop? Yeah, that's the whole program. When you're able to assess, first of all, in your stall for 5 years, are you actually making money, or are you simply on that loop, that cycle of self-employment? If you're not making money, then you can continue to sell, because customers always want cheap. Well, okay, let me take that back. They don't always want cheap. You can always find customers who want cheap. Not all customers just want cheap. So they can continue to buy from you, but you're not moving. So we address that and then begin to see what are the steps that are taken, that need to be taken to move you from the one place to another. This is one of the benefits of being in this class, let me tell you. Because when you're in a room with somebody who's been in business for 5 years, but you can see what they're doing, then you're in that same person who's been in business for 5 years is watching somebody who's starting out with a fresh idea on how they could adapt. Powerful stuff, the networking you're going to do. Really brilliant stuff. Another thing is, would you price products if a percentage of the proceeds goes to support a certain cause? You simply have to do the maths, Mary, because that proceeds going to support a certain cause is simply another cost on that product. And remember the rule that we started off, you're in business to make profit, right? So no matter what, you still have to come back to that rule and ensure that you are answering that question. Betty is asking, how do I price products if I'm a wholesaler, considering I'm selling to retailers who then reprice to sell the consumers? This is a margins question. Yeah. So yours again as a wholesaler is a volumes question, right? So you still cannot sell for less than what it cost you to buy, but you want to be able to move larger volumes so that the smaller margins add up over time. So we discussed that. So I told you, I can't show you everybody's profit and loss margins that are there. I can't be able to do that. But everyone will be able to build one together with the accountant who's helping you to do that. And you'll be able to work it out. No fear on that. Teresa is asking, business is about discipline, so I hear. Could you give a bit of insight on this? What does it entail? So in the program, as you can see, we start off with what is called the entrepreneurship mindset. Why? Because if you have no picture of the future, one of the things that develops discipline is passion. there's a writer called Bill Hybels who's written a book, and he says that passion is a picture of the future that produces passion in you. That's vision. Sorry, vision is a picture of the future that produces passion in you. So the vision is profit, returns, and if you know what that means, then you know what I must do on a daily basis to achieve it. That's number one. And if I need to do it on a daily basis, that's what I'm going to get there. Secondly is actually simply stating your wants and your needs. And in the initial part of this program, we actually ask you, what do you want out of this? So you set it as a goal, because that goal draws you rather than just working in any different direction. When you have a goal, discipline is inevitable. If I want to run a marathon, I don't just show up on that day, I prepare. So the date of the marathon causes the discipline. So setting targets and goals is one of those. And then we give you some tools around it, Teresa. Thinking time, processing time, how you do it within your business, we give you those tools as well. It's a really good question. What investment options can you advise someone in the early 20s, 30s, keeping in mind bill savings, all those different things? Elaine, that question is too big for this session. We can see each other behind the tent. Brief me on how to make a business plan. Okay, so business plan is based on the fundamentals of the business that you are running. And let me tell you, most entrepreneurs, if you look at investors, they look at the numbers first. No matter how wonderful, great business technology, what you're doing, the numbers don't make sense. Please watch Shark Tank, watch these programs. You always see it like this. Yeah, you're telling me the story, This is how the sharks look until somebody says, and we've made $1 million in sales in the first year. They all pack up. Really? Why? Because it's the numbers that shift. So if you get the numbers right, and then now you begin to match it. So in the structures class, we also talk about the business model canvas. Okay. And the business model canvas begins to show you your business on one piece of paper that allows you to pitch it in a coherent way, in a short way that many people can understand and that you're able to build from. Ladies and gentlemen, I've spoken myself hoarse, convincing you, because this is the time for your business to shift. This is the time to get into the right kind of businesses in Africa, because we are one of the last growth markets in the world at this time. And so if you get it right now, please understand, how many international brands have you seen started to move into Africa? Just go down your main street, whichever place you are, and you'll see the number of international businesses. Why? Because this is growth. So let's take up the space that we can here, even as we begin to build towards that profitable future. Ladies and gentlemen, take the time, take that screenshot. If you have not done already, make the payment. Those who are outside of Kenya, we'll assist you with that. It's $10 just to register if you're outside of Kenya, $10, and then we'll support you with the payment plans for the international program for those who are outside of Kenya. But this is what it is. Yeah. This is where we are. Ladies and gentlemen, make the choice now. If we can be able to do this over the next couple of months, it will shift your business forever. All right. Excellent. So starts next week on the 8th, make that payment today, and then you can get into the class, and then we move. Take advantage of that. 1,000 bob off, $10 off, makes a huge difference in your business. You guys are amazing. I would not have done this session if you didn't show up, but you came and made the difference today. So give yourselves a hand. Everybody give yourselves a hand. You've challenged me with many questions that we're going to answer throughout this program. We really appreciate your time, but the real difference, the difference maker, is to show up in the class. Come and try next week. Make that registration, make that first payment, try it out. I'm yet to see someone go back unhappy in the number of years that we're going. So, pleasure to have you guys. Sign up now. See you in class next week. Such a pleasure. God bless everybody. Take care.